What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode. This last weekend I went and did a full detail on my bay boat. I wanted to get a lot of these scratches out of the gel coat and try to get it shining again because it has not shined in a little while and it really desperately needed some work done to it. So I brought the camera out, went through the entire process from start to finish of what I did to buff, polish, wet sand, all that to my boat, and I'm going to bring you guys with me for that. I'm going to show you that entire process so you guys too can have an idea of how to go and detail and buff, wet sand, polish your boat, all of that stuff. So a few things I want to throw out before the video. Number one, this is on a bay boat, not a bass boat. I've got another video from when I've done my bass boat before. Bass boats take significantly more time. Bay boats and stuff that don't have flake in it, like bass boats do in the gel coat, are significantly easier and take less time to do. Number two is I use the ProTech boat restoration products for this. Now you can do the exact same stuff, and I kind of tell you each step what you can do instead of what I'm doing, but with mine I ended up just using ProTech stuff, which has a little bit different steps than what normal buffing compound and polish has. So just keep that in mind. Some things you will need for this job. If you have the ProTech kit, then of course you'll just need that kit. It has everything in it except an actual electric buffer. Variable speed buffer. I tell you what speeds and what not to use in the video. If you don't have the ProTech kit, on top of the buffer, you will also need the cotton wheel for it. You will need some type of foam pad for the actual buffer, and you will also need compound and wet sanding pads, or wet sanding paper. So, outside of that stuff, you really shouldn't need anything else. Maybe some soap, and I talk about it in the steps a little bit. Whenever you're washing your boat after you do the initial wet sand, you want to make sure you do not use ammonia-based soap, because that's what ruins gel coats on all boats. And if you get this shining really good and you use an ammonia-based soap, it's going to pull all the oils and greases out of the gel coat again, and then you're going to have issues again with it not shining. So keep that in mind. Try to find something that's not ammonia-based. I believe most car and RV soaps do not have ammonia in it and are good for the gel coat. So keep that in mind. But outside of that, let's hop into the video, show you guys exactly how to go ahead, wet sand, buff, and polish your boat and get it up good. So the most important part about restoring gel coat is the wet sanding. So we've got three different types of wet sanding paper here. We got 1000 grit, 15 grit, or 1500 grit, and 2000 grit. So we're going to be starting with these, going to be going over everything, hoping that we can get some of these scratches out with this wet sanding. So we'll start at 1000, then go to 1500 after we're done with that, and then to 2000 after that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of a time lapse in here about wet sanding. So we're going to get started with 1000, and after we're done wet sanding, show you what to do next. Now on to 1500 grit. Now, last little bit of sanding with 2000 grit. Alright, now that we're done with buffing, which this boat wasn't that bad, so all I was doing was a little bit of light buffing through each different layer. If it was heavily oxidized, I would have done more. Biggest thing on this was scratches with a little bit of the yellow in the gray gel coat, the yellowing in it. So that's really just what I wanted to knock off real quick before I went through with the actual buffing and polishing. But real quick, we're going to take a microfiber cloth, wipe down the entire hull, get any of that residue from the wet sanding off before we start buffing. And now we let it dry for a little bit before we start buffing. We're going to take a quick little break. Alright, now that everything's dry, we're going to go through with some buffing and whatnot. So if this was a part where if you're using a normal buffing compound or anything, you just start buffing with a high grit or a high cutting or hard, whatever, high cutting compound, whatever you guys would want to use, just a heavy cut compound, something like that. But for me, I'm using the ProTech kit right here, not sponsored or anything, I just like their products a lot. So I'm going to go through the new paint moisturizer, going to rub this down, let it sit till it fogs up a little bit or glazes up a little bit, and then I'll wet down a actual cotton pad and then I'll buff it up. So for right now though, I'm going to get this, going to wipe down the entire side really well with this new paint moisturizer and let it sit for probably about 20-30 minutes, maybe 30-40 minutes depending on how it wants. Today's hot, sun's up, it's probably going to take a little bit less time, so probably closer to that 20 to 30 minute range. So let's get this one. Alright, so it's completely dry now. It's starting to glaze over, as you guys can see. So gonna take a little bit more, gonna take a cotton pad, use a electric variable speed buffer right around, probably around 2000 RPM all the way through. Something that's quick enough to get it to cut in, but not quick enough that it's gonna burn the gel coat. So gonna start this, gonna get this through, and then after that, we're gonna use a soap, something that is not ammonia based, which is very important. Don't use Dawn, anything like that, because it takes oils and greases out and that'll completely take the shine away. So make sure you use something that's not ammonia based and to do the next step after this. But we're going to get this buffed in and then we're going to get to washing it down for the final step. So it's all buffed in, ready to go ahead and wash it. At this point you can either use a microfiber cloth and wipe it all down. I like also doing this with some type of shampoo or some type of wash or soap that is non-ammonia based, so it does not pull all the grease and oil out of the gel coat again. For this I'm using the ProTech wash and gloss right here. So I'm leaving everything on from just buffing it in. I'm going to wash it down with this and it should get all that residue off, leave a good shine to it, and then from there we will let it dry and get to the next step. But this will also help get all that extra compound off of everything, like around all your grommets, your rub rail, everything like that. So just washing it right away like this. So gonna get this in the bucket, gonna get to scrubbing. And now we wait and let it dry again. All right, finally to the last step, doing some type of polish. For me, I'm using that ProTech stuff still, so I'm using the sealant / polish for this step. Basically all you're gonna do is you're gonna get like a yellow pad, just a really soft foam pad for a buffer. Gonna put this on here, really low RPM if you are using a buffer. You can do it by hand too, so I'm gonna be using 1000 RPM, something on this. And I'm gonna put it on there pretty good. I'm gonna let it sit. For this stuff, you're supposed to let it sit before you wipe it off. It could sit up for 24 hours before the coat. So I'm gonna put this on there, let it sit for a little bit, and then wipe it off, and I'll apply another set to it here in a little bit before I'm completely done with it. So same thing as last, gonna get to this, gonna get it all on there and buffed in. So at this point, I forgot to go and make a little narrative spot to explain what I'm doing, but I let it sit for roughly 2 hours after I went through with the buffer with the yellow pad and worked in the polish / sealant. And after that 2 hours, I took a little hand pad or a buffing pad and worked it in by hand throughout one more coat. And then after that coat dried for a little bit, I went back with a microfiber cloth and wiped off all the extra residue. And here's the final product. As you guys can see, the boat is shining a little better than it was before. The gel coat was not that bad to begin with, but it is shining better now, and it did take a lot of the scratches out. And that was the main goal of doing this entire process on the boat itself. It took me a total of about 8 to 10 hours for this boat between the starting of wet sanding and everything, and that also included doing a diluted bleach scrub of the actual upper coat too. I have not done any buffing or polishing on the upper coat. That's going to be another day that I'm going to do that, but this part took me about the 8 to 10 hours mark that you guys are seeing, probably closer to 8. So just keep that in mind whenever you're spending all this time doing your boat yourself. This is a 22-foot boat, so if you have a shorter boat, a little bit less time. If you have a longer boat, a little bit more time. Just keep that in mind. But thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this far, if you enjoy fishing videos, anything like this where I show you some maintenance or stuff to do to your actual boat yourself and gear reviews, make sure to click subscribe, like the video if you like this video so far, and we will see you in the next one.